We are now on to our next session during today's 5th Aging Positively Reunion Project Zoom conference. It's now time for a research update from a number of local research organizations. Earlier today, we heard about COVID-19 research, but now we've got other research to talk about, and Jeff Taylor will start us off with our HIV Research Roundtable. Jeff?
Great, thank you, Brad, and thank you all. So yeah, we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and just so we know that it's not all COVID all the time, we're gonna talk about HIV, because that's what, you know, one thing that we all share, and one thing we still have to deal with in spite of everything else that's going on. So most people probably know who I am, but I'm Jeff Taylor with the HIV and Aging Research Project in Palm Springs. And as the name suggests, we study HIV and aging issues. Mostly we focus on psychosocial issues because, as you're about to hear, the clinical practices in the Valley are doing lots of clinical research. And we're not doctors, we're a community-based research organization. So we partner with people like you to find out what people's issues are and how to best address them. So, you know, we really, like everybody, we had to switch gears when COVID happened. And one thing we wanted to look at was how it was affecting people living with HIV here in the Valley. It affects everybody, obviously, but we were concerned that it might be more challenging for people with HIV. And this was a collaboration with a lot of partners, Chris Christensen, of course, and researchers at USC and at UCR, Brandon Brown, who's been a long-term partner with us in a lot of the research we've done. We could not have done it without him. And also Annie Wynn from USC as well. So what we did is after the shelter-in-place orders went into place in March, we decided to take a look at what kind of mitigation measures would impact the isolation that older people with HIV were experiencing. So we saw a need to really document what was happening so we could share it with not just people, but with their providers as well, so they would know what kind of services to do. So we distributed electronic surveys to anybody over 50 living with HIV in the Valley between April and July of this year. And thanks to many of you who took out these surveys, we surveyed a total of 100 people. The average age was, or mean age was 64.2. And not surprisingly, a lot of people started missing healthcare appointments. I'm sure many of us experienced our appointments getting canceled or they got transferred to telehealth. Of the 35 people who were receiving mental health before the crisis, almost 3/4 of them had that care interrupted during COVID. So it obviously had a big impact on people. And also, you know, we always worry in HIV about our HIV meds and adherence, and 1/4 did report missing a dose. And they all listed forgot as one of the reasons. And one of the comments that people wrote was they were more stressed, and when they're stressed, they miss doses. So I think, you know, it's pretty obvious that the crisis was having an effect on people. And also not surprising is the people who had interruptions in their mental health care also experienced interruptions in their HIV medication. So let me go back a minute, sorry. So we're planning a larger survey, and we'll be turning to you for your help with this. And we're going to be looking at the same population, but this time we want to compare HIV positive versus HIV negative people living with HIV, because we want to see if there are differences. Obviously, here in our kind of homogeneous LGBT community here in the desert, most people, positive or negative, lived through the epidemic. And so all of us have some degree of PTSD, but so we want to really tease out what the differences are if you have HIV versus you don't. We talked about PTSD and long-term survivor syndrome earlier, and we want to really tease that out. So be looking for that. We're also doing one on stigma, and both of these surveys that will be rolling out soon. The stigma survey is already open. They both have a $20 incentive for doing that. So we encourage you to check your mail. We'll be sending things out as those surveys become available, and we thank you in advance for your help in doing this. So thank you again, and we're going to move on to Borrego and Mike Caruso. So Mike, if you're on, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, I'm on. And thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's really a pleasure to be able to represent Borrego Health. So about me, I am a substance use disorder counselor, and I work on the eye care team at Borrego Health. If you're not familiar with Borrego Health, we are one of the largest federally qualified health centers in the nation. We are the one of 8 in California. And what that means is that we are a safety net clinic network for underserved populations. I specifically work at the Stonewall Medical Center in Cathedral City. And at Stonewall, we have a lot of unique programs for the community. There's the Triumph Trans Clinic. We serve the trans population of Coachella Valley. And eye care is a unique program as well. Well, a little history on eye care, I guess. So it originated, it is derived from the Getting Off program, which actually, incidentally, I worked on for 7 years at Friends Community Center in West Hollywood. This is not a research program. It was research way back when, but that's like way before my time. It has been a service program for quite some time now, about 15 years. But Borrego has based the eye care program off the Getting Off program. And what makes it unique at Stonewall is that it is specifically for men, gay and bi men, 50 years of age or older, who have HIV and also are using meth. As we know, HIV has, there's health issues as we age. And certainly with meth, there's health issues too. But the two combined, what's really happening here is a whole host of comorbidity and health issues that meth is just exacerbating. So most commonly what's happening is that people, when they're using, they don't take their HIV meds. So so that leads to all these other issues. So that's why it's specific for gay men, gay and bi men, 50 and older at Stonewall. And so through that, the whole objective is to get them to, cut down or eliminate meth altogether, and at least start taking the meds again, so that the other health issues are not coming into play. And so that is what we do. And if anybody has any questions, if there's time left at the end, then I'd be more than happy to answer those. Thank you for letting me be here.
Great, thank you so much, Mike. And if you like, feel free to put your contact info in the chat box there. So if people have any questions for you or about eye care, they can contact you that way. So next up is Desert AIDS Project with Greg Jackson. So Greg, welcome, take it away.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the invite again. It's a lot different this time than it was the last time we did this, that's for sure. I was a month into the job at the time when we were at Eisenhower doing this program, and we didn't even have any protocols open at DAP. So things have changed. So I'll just do a kind of a quick overview of what we're doing these days. And, oh, it moved. So our research team is, as you see, Dr. Singh is our director of research and principal investigator on several of our trials. Dr. Morris is principal investigator for the Anchor trial, and so on down the line. We're trying to incorporate as many of our clinicians as possible into our clinical trials to kind of have the whole team involved. So next slide. So the Anchor trial, as we all know, it's been this name's been around for a while now. Since the last time I spoke, we have been, we've been screening patients. We've screened about 80 patients who are 35 and older, living with, who have HIV, and they want to be screened for high-grade squamous intraepithelial lesions, and this is a anal cancer prevention trial. So it's bouncing all over the place. So we've screened 80 patients. We've randomized 35. We're definitely up and running. We're taking as many as we can these days. So it's been a very interesting learning curve throughout. As you know, Jeff, you've been involved with this from the beginning for years. But we still have we just reached the 4,000th patient nationally, so we still have another 1,000 to go. So we have about another year of enrollment involved with this. All right, next. So what we have upcoming, so we're about to open the GSK Solar trial, which is for patients with HIV who are virologically suppressed with Biktarvy. And basically this isn't a salvage trial or anything like that. It's basically a second line therapy. And this is using the long-acting cabotegravir rilpivirine injection given every 2 months and the trial goes on for about a year. So the randomization is 2 to 1. So two out of 3 patients will get the long-acting injection, and the others will stay on their Biktarvy. So this is about to begin. They're thinking about mid-November. We're kind of waiting on lab kits. The interesting part of this, so it's a global trial. They want 25% enrollment of cis and or trans females, which, knowing DAP, we're kind of really have to try and look for those patients to be involved in our clinical trials. So that will be our task in all of this. Enrollment will start and finish very quickly. They hope that enrollment will be done by February, but and then we'll go from there following many assets. All right, next. So the other upcoming clinical trial is our Gilead Switch trial, which Jeff has been involved with this, with our quality of life portion of this one. He's helping. This is an investigator initiated trial. We have the Gilead is helping us with the creation of it, but it's any patients who are at least 65 years of age and have never been on Biktarvy. It's switching to Biktarvy, and we're going to look at efficacy, safety, polypharmacy, and quality of life as endpoints throughout all of this. This is kind of a whole from all of the other studies that Gilead has done with Biktarvy. So they're really interested in the data on this. And so we're hoping that we can learn a lot in this 65 years of age and older population. All right. So next slide. So the final thing I just want to talk about, so since the last time I talked, we actually opened the STAT trial and it's been completed. We just saw our last patient last week. And this was presented at the ACT HIV 2020 as a virtual poster and just showed Dovato as a rapid start therapy has been shown to be successful. 92% achieved HIV viral loads under 50 within the first 24 weeks. So that's kind of our menu in a nutshell for right now.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Greg. And thank you for sharing everything that's going on at DAP. So up next is Dr. Lichtenstein from Eisenhower. So Dr. Lichtenstein.
So, hello again, everyone. Can everybody?
Yeah. Unmute myself. Okay. So
I've been involved with HIV for about 37 years and been involved with a lot of the HIV studies with the various drugs that have been developed over those years. So I've had the great opportunity to see the evolution from 12 to 30 pills a day down to single or daily medication, looking at co-formulated medications. And now, as you heard, we've got some long-acting medications. And so next slide. To start off with, we have been doing, it's called the Atlas 2M study. This is cabotegravir, an investigational integrase inhibitor with rilpivirine given intramuscularly every 2 months. This compared to monthly to find out whether the every 2 month is adequate. It is something that won't be self-administered, so it does require visits to have it injected. I should point out that there are, again, no oral medications. Patients love it because of that. All of our subjects have commented on that. It is fully enrolled, but the reason I bring that up is, next slide, we do have a grant proposal in, which looks like it's been accepted. Dr. Stapleton and myself are involved with this, where we're looking at people who are suppressed on daily antiretroviral therapy, switching to cabotegravir and rilpivirine every 2 months. The whole idea is to look at the gut microbiome. That's the bacteria that are in the gut. Antiretroviral therapy alters that, which destabilizes the lining of the gut. We get products of bacteria going across the wall of the intestine into the inflammatory tissue that surrounds the gut, which results in inflammation. So we're looking at whether administering it intramuscularly rather than orally will reduce inflammation by normalizing the microbiome of the gut. This should be starting in the next few weeks. Next slide, please. We're also involved with the Reprieve trial. This too has closed to enrollment, but the reason that we are looking at this is that it has been noted that, as you know, cardiovascular disease is more common in HIV than it is in the general population at every age group. And so the idea was whether the guidelines for when to start statins should be altered for HIV-infected folks. So the folks that were in this study were people who did not qualify for statins because they were too healthy. They were put on pitavastatin or placebo. This is a large nationwide study, 6,500 patients. It's a 6-year study, and the outcomes are going to be cardiovascular events like heart attack or stroke, or some cancers, liver disease, kidney disease, etc. This is an NIH study. So we can go to the next slide. The Capella study, this is another long-acting agent. This is, Gilead has this particular agent, which is a capsid inhibitor. It hits viral replication at 3 different sites. It is are you ready? A subcutaneous injection every 6 months. This particular study is a study it's actually a deep salvage study for people who have a high level of resistance to all classes of drugs and have not been suppressed. I should say that so far the results are astounding. So we're very excited about moving forward with this study. It is a very well tolerated injection, as I say, every 6 months. With that, I'm going to actually, there's one other study with this particular drug, but it's closed. It was for naive patients. We do know that we have been contacted about doing another study with this drug for people who are considering switch because of failing therapy, but who still have other oral options. So with that in mind, it's open to any questions that you have.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Lichtenstein, and Greg and Mike as well. So any questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat. That's the easiest way. And I will
Jeff?
check to see
Jeff?
if anyone.
Jeff, can you hear me? Hello? Jeff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jeff, it's Carlos from Palmtree Clinical Research. We're next.
Okay, great. There you go.
Hey, hi. All right. Hi, guys. Thank you for having me. Just wanted to do a very quick summary of the HIV studies that we're currently doing at this moment. Next slide, please. So this is a very loaded slide, but I'll just point out the main points from this slide to actually take today. So this is a phase 3 clinical trial for heavily treatment experienced patients. And if you look at point number 2, the patients that we are targeting in this study is patients that are practically breaking all their drugs or their the HIV treatments, and they have a viral load higher than 500 copies per milliliter. The next point that I want to actually bring out is that that patient needs to have at least triple class resistance, either NRTIs, NNRTIs, or some of the PIs. Also, they need to have at least one fully active antiretroviral to be able to make a background therapy. In regards to the inclusion or exclusion for triple class resistance, they've also mentioned now that if the patient is not tolerant to a drug, that is actually going to be considered. So any intolerance is also could actually help you get into the clinical trial. And then below where it says study design, this is practically how it is going to be divided. It's divided into 3 parts: a running period, part 1, and part 2. The running period is practically where we see if you qualify for the study by making sure that your viral load remains above 500 copies per milliliter, and that you are taking your pills as instructed, your failing regimen as instructed. Then part 1, that is where you are randomized into one of those 4 groups, either that is islatravir, doravirine, or the combination of those 2, or a placebo. All those 4 groups, you actually remain for 7 days on your failing regimen. After that 7 days, you jump on the actual investigational product, which is the combination of doravirine and islatravir, plus an optimized background therapy. And it's for 48 weeks treatment, and there is actually talks of having expanded access to this drug. Next slide, please. The next slide is for patients that have a confirmed positive result for gonorrhea, or that have any sort of signs and symptoms of jello discharge. Patients that are HIV positive are allowed to be part of this clinical trial as long as they're controlled. This study is comparing oral gepotidacin compared to standard of care, which is the intramuscular ceftriaxone and azithromycin. A lot of the people, the reason why they like this study is because it's a treatment that it's only orally, and they don't have to actually undergo the pain of the intramuscular injection. It's a 21-day study with 3-day visits to our clinic. Next slide, please. This is a phase 3 study for patients that have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. If you have a diagnosis of IPF within the last 3 years, and if you have a high-resolution CT scan, no more than 1 year older, you guys can qualify for the clinical trial. And even if you are getting one of the 2 treatments that is allowed for this, that are approved by the FDA at this moment for IPF, you can still be enrolled in this clinical trial. And if you're not in any of those medications, you're still able to enroll. And one of the reasons why our PI actually likes this study a lot is because it's an inhaled powder. So it actually goes straight to your lungs instead of having all the nasty side effects of the FDA approved medications at this moment. And this study is actually about 2 years long. Next slide, please. And lastly, at the bottom part, if you can see where it says upcoming studies, we were just awarded the COVID-19 vaccine trial from Merck. It's 1 injection that is given to you in the muscle. It's intramuscular. And it's, we see you in the clinic 7 times in the period of 2 years. At this moment, we're trying to see who can actually be interested. And thank you, Shana, for actually putting the survey. We have a little survey, Survey Monkey, where we have some questions for anyone that might be interested. And that way we can actually start gathering some patient names for the future if you guys are interested in this clinical trial. That's it. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Carlos. This was terrific. And thank you to all of our presenters. So we have a few minutes, about 3 minutes for any questions. So go ahead. I see that Jonathan had asked if we could clarify which study that he and Dr. Stapleton would be opening in a few weeks. Was that the?
That was looking at whether the microbiome of the gut is the one that we're hoping to open. Probably a month. We have to take it through our IRB. The other studies that are still enrolling are the Deep South study with the capsid inhibitor, the every 6-month injection.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Any other questions? See if there's anything else in the chat that I missed. There was a question, how many classes of drugs do we now currently have approved? Hmm?
No, it's probably about 6, I think, classes at this point. It's increasing. The one that was mentioned from Palmtree research is a reverse transcriptase translocation inhibitor. So that's another class.
Great, let me see if there's any other questions, and if not, we'll move along into our next session. Make sure that everybody can hear. I know somebody said, is everyone able to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes always check to make sure your mic is on. We do our best to make sure that they're on here, but that everybody's got their own devices. So terrific.
All right, Jeff.
Greg.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff, and to our research panel today. It is now 2:30. In just 30 minutes, Javier Munoz will be joining us for our keynote this afternoon at 3 p.m. And before we move on to our next session, we've got just a few seconds. I wanted to take a moment to thank all of our committee members. And I believe we have everyone. If we missed anyone, either raise your hand or let Jeff know in a private chat. Jeff Taylor from HARP-PS, the Executive Director, JP Allen and Sue Lowe from Desert AIDS Project, Julie Hirsch from Jewish Family Service, Richard Bass from PALS, Christina Reeves, Borrego Health, Jax Kelly, Let's Kick Ass, Brett Klein at Eisenhower Health, our host today, Jennifer Morton at HARP-PS, Guy Barrow at HARP, also Jeff Deneen Jones from Gay Desert Guide, Candace Nichols from the LGBTQ Center, and CJ Tobe from DAP. Did I miss anyone? I think we have everyone identified.
He is with the center, not with HARP.
Ah, Guy is with the center now. Okay, well, I'll make that change.
You just did.
All right. Well, now it is 2:30.